My beloved friends, hear this truth with the full force of your spirit. No wound escapes God's notice, no tear falls without divine response, and no injustice slips past the eternal law that governs this universe. When someone hurts you, they are not merely striking at your emotions, they are striking against the spiritual order itself. And the moment harm is done, the laws of God begin moving with unstoppable precision. You may not see it, you may not feel it, but the divine mind has already begun its work. The power that created galaxies, the power that carved oceans and breathed life into your being, immediately sets in motion a chain of events that brings balance, correction, and justice. The universe is not blind, God is not silent. Heaven is not passive. There is a spiritual force acting right now, calm, deliberate, and exact on behalf of your soul. Those who wronged you did not realize the spiritual principle they violated. They did not understand that the moment they wounded your heart, they awakened a sacred law that never fails, a law that protects you, a law that defends you, a law that restores you and deals with those who have caused you pain. My friends, today you will discover the 7 undeniable signs that God is intervening not through chaos, but through divine order, not through revenge, but through perfect spiritual correction, not through human emotion, but through the infinite wisdom that governs all life. Calm your mind, lift your spirit. For what you are about to hear will remind you of this eternal truth. God fights for you in ways the world can't see, and when He moves, no one can escape His justice. When God begins to deal with those who hurt you, one of the first signs is a disruption in their comfort, a disturbance within the quiet corners of their own mind. This discomfort is not punishment in the human sense. It is the awakening of conscience, a stirring of the spiritual laws they have violated. Every action we take, especially those rooted in harm, releases an energy that must eventually return to its sender. When someone injures you with words, betrays your trust, or wounds your spirit, the divine order immediately begins its work, and the initial movement of that order is the inner unrest that rises within them. They may appear strong externally, carrying on with daily life, but beneath the surface, something begins to shift. They start encountering strange interruptions, unexpected frustrations, or moments of reflection that are uncomfortable yet necessary. This is the subconscious mind becoming aware of the imbalance created by their behavior. God deals with people in the area of their consciousness first, because this is the place where genuine transformation begins. Human beings often try to suppress guilt, justify wrongdoing, or cover their actions with pride. But the divine law does not allow this suppression to last. It brings a gentle yet persistent stirring, a spiritual agitation that whispers, "Something is not right." This is the beginning of accountability. They may lie awake at night, remembering their actions. They may suddenly feel uneasy around the very people they once felt superior to or indifferent toward. They may find themselves reflecting on words they spoke, realizing they pierced deeper than intended. All of this is God's way of turning their attention inward. The more they resist this inner nudge, the more intense the discomfort becomes. This is not cruelty, it is correction. God wants them to awaken to the truth of what they have done, not to crush them, but to bring them toward clarity. Human pride often resists this awakening, but the divine law is patient and persistent. It continues to tap, push, and reveal until the conscience can no longer remain asleep. Some people will try to distract themselves through busyness, work, relationships, or entertainment, but nothing fully silences the inner voice that God activates. Even if they try to shift blame, even if they attempt to rewrite the narrative, they cannot escape the inner imbalance that has been stirred. Eventually, life begins to mirror their inner state. God allows circumstances to reflect what needs correcting within them. They may encounter frustrations they never experienced before. Plans may no longer flow smoothly, conversations may take unexpected turns, opportunities may slip from their hands. All of these disruptions serve as reminders that something in their conduct requires examination. This is not karma in a casual sense, it is divine order working with exact precision. The universe governs itself through spiritual principles that cannot be bypassed. Harm sent out must eventually pass through the consciousness of the one who initiated it. This awakening of conscience becomes especially powerful when the person tries to pretend nothing happened. They may smile outwardly, but inwardly there is a restlessness. They may act confidently, but inwardly doubts whisper. They may judge you, criticize you, or dismiss you, yet inwardly they feel a subtle pull toward reflection. This is the divine law working for your protection and for their correction. The discomfort grows not because God wants them to suffer, but because God wants them to transform. Any harm they have done to you has already begun its return journey, not to destroy them, but to illuminate them. God does not simply allow wrongdoing to drift into the background. He brings it to the forefront of their mind until they recognize the truth. They begin to understand that their actions carried spiritual weight. They realize that words spoken carelessly or actions taken selfishly have consequences that echo beyond the moment. Slowly, they come face to face with the very energy they released. They begin to feel what they made you feel: uncertainty, tension, emotional heaviness, or internal conflict. This is the law, balancing the scales. It is not revenge but reflection. It is not punishment but correction. It is the divine way of saying, this must not continue. And while all of this is happening within them, you may see nothing on the outside, and that is the beauty of God's work. He operates in the hidden place, the secret corridors of conscience, where transformation truly begins. God does not need to embarrass a person publicly to correct them. He speaks directly to the soul. And when God stirs a person's conscience, no amount of denial, distraction, or resistance can quiet that voice. It follows them, speaks to them, challenges them, and ultimately leads them to face themselves in a way they can no longer avoid. This is the first sign that God is dealing with those who hurt you. Their comfort ends, their conscience awakens, and the divine law begins its subtle, powerful work within them. When God begins removing a person's influence and access to your life, it is one of the clearest indications that He has stepped into the situation on your behalf. This shift does not happen suddenly or violently. Instead, it unfolds with quiet precision, as though an unseen hand is rearranging the pieces of your life. There are moments when you might not understand why certain connections are weakening, or why certain relationships suddenly feel heavy, distant, or uncomfortable. But what you are experiencing is divine protection in motion. God often creates distance long before we realize that distance is necessary. The people who once had easy access to your emotions, your time, and your spirit begin to drift, not because you changed, but because God has intervened to guard your peace. When someone hurts you, God does not always confront them directly at first. Instead, He begins by creating boundaries they can no longer cross. They may try to reach you the way they once did, but the connection feels different. Their words don't land the same way, their presence no longer influences you like before, and their attempts to control or manipulate your emotions lose their power. This is not by accident, it is intentional. God is slowly cutting the emotional cords that once kept you entangled. Sometimes He does this by shifting your inner state. Your heart becomes stronger, your mind becomes clearer, and your spirit becomes more aware. Other times, He does this externally, blocking communication, closing doors, introducing delays, or creating circumstances that naturally separate you from them. You may notice that conversations start to fade, responses become less frequent, or meetings happen less often. This distancing is not random, it is spiritual. God is placing a shield between you and the person who caused harm. Even if you still feel attached, even if a part of you wants closure or clarity, God knows that maintaining access would only reopen old wounds or create new ones. So he steps in to protect your emotional space. He knows when someone's presence is harmful, even when you can't see it. He knows when your loyalty is being misused, when your kindness is being exploited, and when your love is being taken for granted. When your heart is too generous to walk away on its own, God walks away for you by removing the influence of the one who wounded you. Sometimes this removal happens through conflict, not because God wants you to fight, but because he allows tension to expose the truth of the relationship. The conversations that used to be smooth become strained. The energy that once felt familiar becomes uncomfortable. What once flowed easily now feels forced. This shift is often painful because humans cling to familiarity, even if that familiarity is unhealthy. But God disrupts the comfort so you can see the relationship for what it truly is, not what you wished it to be. When God removes influence, he is not only protecting you from the individual, he is protecting you from the emotional patterns that allowed their influence to affect you in the first place. For others, the removal comes through opportunity. You may find yourself stepping into new environments, new responsibilities, or new relationships that naturally reduce your time and emotional bandwidth for those who hurt you. While you are rising, they are being moved to the background. This is part of God's elevation process. As he lifts you, he restricts who is allowed to come with you. Not everyone who walked with you in one season is meant to walk with you in the next. God ensures that those who wounded your spirit cannot follow you into the places where he is taking you. Their influence is reduced because their access is no longer aligned with your purpose. In some cases, God removes their influence by revealing their true intentions. Once you see who a person really is, their power over you dissolves. You can no longer be manipulated by someone once you recognize the pattern behind their actions. When truth enters your awareness, chains fall off. God shows you things not to hurt you, but to free you. Once you understand the spiritual purpose behind a person's behavior, their access becomes limited, not by force, but by clarity. At times, people who hurt you will attempt to re-enter your life, but every attempt feels blocked. Their message doesn't go through, their effort feels empty, their presence feels wrong. This is God's doing. He will not allow what harmed you to regain influence. He will not permit old wounds to reopen. When God removes access, he seals the area with spiritual armor. No matter how much someone tries to reinsert themselves, the door remains spiritually closed. And perhaps the most comforting truth is this: when God removes someone's influence, he is not only taking something away, he is making room for something far better. He removes what drains you so he can bring what strengthens you. He removes what confuses you so he can introduce what clarifies you. He removes what breaks you so he can prepare what builds you. The distancing is not rejection, it is redirection. And when God redirects, it is always for your healing, your growth, and your protection. When God begins to expose someone's hidden intentions and true character, it often happens in ways that feel subtle at first, yet unmistakably purposeful. This exposure is not meant to embarrass them or satisfy your desire for explanation. It is meant to protect you, awaken you, and guide you toward clarity. People can hide motives behind smiles, hide jealousy behind compliments, and hide resentment behind politeness. But nothing hidden stays hidden forever when God decides it's time for you to see the truth. The divine law operates with precision. Whatever is concealed in darkness eventually comes to light, and whatever is meant to mislead you becomes revealed, so you are no longer vulnerable to deception. God will not let you walk blindly into emotional danger. Exposure begins inside your intuition. You start noticing small things you previously overlooked. Their words no longer match their tone, their gestures feel different, Their energy shifts in ways you can't explain logically. This inner alertness is not paranoia, it is spiritual discernment awakening within you. God speaks through intuition when your mind cannot yet grasp what your spirit already senses. He gently nudges your awareness, helping you see the cracks in the mask someone has worn. You may catch yourself questioning their sincerity, wondering why they acted a certain way, or replaying conversations that suddenly feel off. This inner stirring is the beginning of exposure. Then God allows circumstances to reveal what their behavior tried to hide. A comment slips from their mouth that exposes resentment. A reaction reveals their envy. A sudden overstep shows their lack of respect. A moment of frustration reveals their real attitude toward you. People can control their presentation for a while, but God orchestrates situations where their true nature emerges. They might reveal their selfishness when you need support. They might show their disloyalty when you require honesty. They might display their competitiveness when you celebrate a win. These revelations are not coincidences. They are divine signals. God is showing you who they truly are, so you stop believing who they pretend to be. Sometimes exposure happens through other people. Someone mentions something they shouldn't know. Someone reveals a private conversation that was spoken behind your back. Someone repeats their comments that contradict what they've said to you. And suddenly, the truth begins to connect like pieces in a puzzle. What once felt confusing becomes clear. Things that didn't make sense suddenly make perfect sense. God uses others not to gossip, but to bring confirmation to what He has already been stirring in your spirit. When a pattern of truth aligns from multiple directions, it is not rumor, it's revelation. There are also times when God exposes intentions by removing His protection from their actions. They may attempt to manipulate a situation, but it backfires. They may try to keep secrets, but details leak. They may plan something against you, but it comes out before it can affect you. They may speak negatively about you, but the conversation returns to you through an unexpected source. God lifts the veil and allows their actions to be seen for what they are. Not to shame them, but to ensure you are no longer left vulnerable. Exposure can also come through spiritual contrast. As you grow in self-respect, their disrespect becomes undeniable. As you become more aligned with truth, their dishonesty becomes clearer. As you grow in confidence, their insecurity becomes more apparent. Growth creates clarity. When God elevates you inwardly, you automatically begin to see who cannot rise with you. The difference between your intentions and theirs becomes so obvious that you cannot ignore it anymore. God uses your transformation as a mirror to reveal the misalignment, and perhaps the most striking part of exposure is how gentle yet undeniable it is. God doesn't shout the truth at you. He reveals it in layers, in moments, in small details, until you see the full picture without needing further explanation. You begin to realize that their kindness was selective, their support conditional, their loyalty inconsistent. You understand that what you thought was friendship was convenience. What you thought was love was control. What you thought was care was self-interest. This clarity may hurt, but it heals more than it wounds. Once God exposes someone's true intentions, you cannot unsee it. You cannot return to previous innocence, nor can you continue treating them as though nothing was revealed. Exposure gives you the spiritual authority to step back without guilt. It frees you from emotional attachment, from false expectations, and from illusions you once clung to. And while exposure may feel like loss, it is in truth a form of protection. God reveals not to harm you, but to save you from deeper harm. He shows you who people are, so you can choose peace over pain, clarity over confusion, and truth over illusion. This exposure is one of the greatest signs that God is dealing with those who hurt you. Their hidden intentions rise to the surface, their masks fall, and you finally see with spiritual vision what was once hidden behind shadows. When God begins to allow the plans of those who hurt you to collapse, it is not an act of vengeance, but an act of divine alignment. Every intention, every scheme, and every hidden agenda carries a spiritual frequency, and when that frequency is rooted in harm, manipulation, deceit, or pride, it cannot stand before the laws of God. People may believe their plans are clever, that their words are powerful, or that their actions are beyond consequence, but nothing built on dishonesty or harm has the strength to withstand divine truth. When God steps in, even the most carefully crafted plans begin to fall apart, piece by piece, often in ways that confuse the one who initiated them. What they thought would work smoothly suddenly meets resistance. What they believed would unfold without flaws begins to crumble under the weight of spiritual justice. God does not collapse their plans all at once. He allows their own intentions to unravel them. A lie they told collides with another lie. A story they manipulated starts conflicting with reality. A strategy they used against you begins turning inward, back toward them. This unraveling is not random, it is precise. God lets their efforts fail not simply to protect you, but to awaken them to the spiritual principle that harm cannot succeed. Even if their actions seemed successful at first, if they succeeded in hurting you, confusing you, distancing themselves, or damaging your reputation, those temporary wins cannot sustain themselves. They were built on unstable ground, and what is unstable eventually collapses. Sometimes the collapse comes through unexpected miscommunication. They try to coordinate something against you, but the people they depend on misunderstand them. Their intentions don't translate. Their words backfire. They find themselves trapped in the very confusion they tried to create. God allows these disruptions so they learn that harming someone spiritually protected is impossible. At other times, the collapse happens through exposure. A plan they set in motion is revealed earlier than intended. Someone they trusted speaks out. A detail they overlooked becomes the very thing that dismantles their strategy. These moments are subtle reminders that God is not passive. He observes the intentions behind actions, not just the actions themselves, and he responds accordingly. There are moments when the collapse feels almost poetic in its accuracy. The very trap they set for you becomes the trap they fall into. The emotional turmoil they hoped you would experience becomes the turmoil they encounter. The disrespect they showed you returns to them through someone else. This is not coincidence, it is principle. The universe returns what is sent. God's law is circular, not linear. When someone sends out harm, it does not travel in a straight line forever. It curves, turns, and eventually circles back to its source. The collapse is simply the moment the curve completes its journey. Sometimes God collapses their plans by strengthening you. The more clarity you gain, the less influence they have. The more wisdom you acquire, the fewer openings exist for their intentions to work. They may try to manipulate your emotions, but you've healed enough to recognize the pattern. They may try to provoke you, but your peace has deepened to the point where their actions no longer disturb you. They may try to control your decisions, but the authority they once held has dissolved. Their plan collapses because you no longer play the role they expected you to play. At times, God collapses their efforts through divine timing. Something they planned gets delayed, then delayed again until it is no longer relevant. Their idea loses power because it came too late. The opportunity they tried to use against you expires. Timing is one of God's greatest tools. A harmful plan executed out of season loses its impact. God rearranges the clock in your favor. There are also moments when God simply removes the resources they relied upon. The people who supported their harmful intentions lose interest. The influence they once had weakens, their confidence diminishes. Their access to information disappears. Their ability to push their narrative fades. Without the tools they once held, their plans collapse naturally, quietly, and inevitably. The collapse does not always happen publicly. In fact, most spiritual collapses occur in silence. They experience internal conflict. They doubt themselves. They regret decisions. They feel the weight of their own actions. Every attempt they make to continue the plan feels heavier, harder, and less effective. This internal collapse is often the most transformative because it forces them to confront their own motives. And while their plans crumble, God strengthens you. He gives you clarity, protection, peace, and distance. He aligns you with opportunities and people that elevate your spirit. He ensures that no plan formed against you can prosper, not because you are perfect, but because you are protected. Their collapse is not your victory, it is God's demonstration. It shows that no harm aimed toward you can thrive when you are under divine care. This is the fourth sign God is dealing with those who hurt you. Whatever they built against you cannot stand, and sooner or later it collapses under the weight of divine truth. When God begins turning someone's attacks into your elevation, it becomes one of the most powerful signs that He is actively working on your behalf. What was meant to weaken you becomes the very force that strengthens you. What was intended to break you becomes the foundation for your breakthrough. This reversal does not happen suddenly, nor does it happen by chance. It unfolds through a divine process in which God transforms every wound, every setback, and every injustice into a stepping stone for your growth, maturity, and spiritual advancement. People may believe their actions succeeded in hurting you, but they fail to realize that God weaves even their malice into the fabric of your destiny. What they meant for harm, God repurposes for your good in ways they could never anticipate. Many times, the attacks you faced did not reveal your weakness, they revealed your strength. They exposed what God had placed inside you, qualities you might not have recognized without adversity. Courage rises when it is tested, resilience emerges when it is stretched, wisdom grows when it is challenged. Every attack pushed you closer to discovering who you truly are. The moments you thought would destroy you actually awakened dormant abilities, uncovered deeper faith, and gave birth to a new level of emotional and spiritual maturity. Without the pain, you might never have tapped into those parts of yourself. This is one of God's divine mysteries. He uses what hurts to develop what heals. There are times when God elevates you directly through the attacks. Someone may have tried to discredit you, but their efforts ended up drawing more attention to your integrity. Someone may have attempted to isolate you, yet the isolation gave you the space you needed to gain clarity, strength, and direction. Someone may have tried to take something from you, but the loss positioned you for something far greater. The very things they thought would reduce you became catalysts for your rise. Their actions indirectly pushed you toward breakthroughs you would not have pursued without friction. God also elevates you by changing your inner landscape. The attacks forced you to confront your boundaries, your values, your identity, and your purpose. You learned to stop tolerating disrespect. You learned to stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that belittled you. You learned to recognize manipulation, to see through dishonesty, and to value your peace above temporary approval. These inner shifts represent spiritual elevation. You became wiser, stronger, and more discerning. You became someone who no longer accepts the bare minimum. The attack did not downgrade you, it upgraded your identity. Sometimes elevation comes through unexpected opportunities. After someone attempts to harm your reputation, God opens doors that prove your character. After someone betrays you, God brings new connections that honor you in ways the old ones never did. After someone mistreats you, God places you in environments where you are valued, seen, and respected. These new opportunities are not random blessings, they are divine responses to injustice. God sees the pain others inflict, and He ensures that you rise above it. Your elevation becomes evidence of His involvement. At times, God turns their attacks into elevation by increasing your spiritual authority. Pain sharpens perception. Heartbreak deepens compassion. Betrayal strengthens intuition. You become someone who leads with empathy, discernment, and strength. You recognize energy faster, you sense intentions sooner, you set boundaries without guilt. This spiritual authority makes you harder to deceive, harder to manipulate, and harder to destroy. Their attack shaped a version of you that is far more powerful than the version that existed before. God can also elevate you financially or professionally through the harm done. Maybe losing a job or opportunity because of someone's actions pushed you into something better, your own business, a new career, a new skill, or a new environment where you can thrive. Maybe their attempt to block your progress placed you on a path that leads to even greater success. When God elevates you materially or professionally through someone's attack, it becomes undeniable that divine hands are at work. There are moments when God elevates you simply by giving you peace. The chaos they brought becomes the contrast that makes your newfound calmness precious. The anxiety they stirred becomes the reason you value emotional safety. The emotional turmoil they caused becomes the motivation for healing, growth, and self-love. Peace is elevation in its purest form. Elevation also occurs when God increases your influence. People may try to silence you, yet God gives you a bigger platform. They may try to make others turn against you, yet God surrounds you with stronger, more loyal relationships. They may try to minimize your worth, yet God places you in positions where your gifts shine undeniably. Their attack becomes the wind that lifts your wings. And perhaps the most powerful aspect of this divine reversal is that your elevation stands as a testimony, not a testimony of your strength alone, but of God's faithfulness. Your rise becomes a message. No attack can stop what God has ordained. No betrayal can reverse your purpose. No loss can prevent your destiny. Their attack was real, but God's response was greater. This is the fifth sign that God is dealing with those who hurt you. He turns what they meant for your destruction into the very force that elevates your life. When God brings divine justice in His timing, not yours, it becomes one of the most profound and undeniable signs that He is dealing with those who hurt you. Divine justice is not rushed, reactive, or driven by emotion the way human responses often are. Instead, it is measured, intentional, and perfectly aligned with truth. You may find yourself wanting immediate answers, instant closure, or quick vindication, but God sees the entire picture, past, present, and future, while you only see a single moment. His justice unfolds in ways that produce lasting healing, not temporary satisfaction. When God moves, He does so to restore balance, correct what was wrong, and teach lessons that bring transformation rather than destruction. Waiting on His timing can be challenging, but it is in that waiting that you learn trust, strength, and spiritual maturity. Divine justice often begins long before you notice its effects. While you are still hurting, questioning, and trying to make sense of what happened, God has already begun arranging events, aligning circumstances, and positioning His response. You may think nothing is happening, but behind the scenes, doors are closing, truths are rising, and consequences are forming. God's justice is quiet before it becomes visible. It moves in silence, but it manifests in undeniable clarity. The person who hurt you may appear to thrive for a season, continuing with their life as though their actions carried no weight. But divine timing is not based on appearances. It is based on alignment. When the moment is right, what was hidden comes forth, what was ignored becomes obvious, and what was done in darkness faces the light. Part of divine justice involves allowing people to see the impact of their actions. God does not always bring instant consequences because He gives space for awareness, repentance, and self-examination. He offers people the chance to correct themselves before the weight of their decisions returns to them. This space is not evidence of God ignoring the situation. It is evidence of His mercy. But mercy does not eliminate justice, it precedes it. When someone refuses to change, refuses to acknowledge their wrongdoing, or continues harming others, then divine justice shifts from patience to action. It steps into their path in ways they cannot avoid or explain. Sometimes divine justice comes through loss of opportunities, relationships, influence, or peace. The things they used to rely on begin slipping away. Plans no longer succeed with ease. Their confidence weakens. Their inner world becomes unsettled. These shifts are not random. They are carefully calibrated responses to the imbalance they created. God allows people to experience the consequences of what they have sown, not to crush them, but to awaken them. It is a spiritual law. The energy they send out must eventually return. Other times, divine justice comes through exposure. The truth they tried to hide surfaces. A lie they constructed unravels. Their actions come to light through unexpected means. People who once believed their false image begin to see their true character. Exposure is one of God's most precise forms of justice because it reveals the truth without requiring your involvement. You don't have to fight, confront, or defend yourself. God reveals what needs to be known. Yet divine justice does not only deal with those who hurt you, it also heals you in the process. While God is addressing the situation externally, He is also strengthening you internally. He restores your self-worth, heals your emotional wounds, and brings clarity to your mind. You begin to see why certain things happened the way they did. You understand the lessons, the growth, and the elevation that emerged from your pain. You realize that you survived something that could have broken you, and that survival becomes part of your testimony. God's justice is always twofold, correcting what was done to you and elevating you beyond it. One of the most powerful aspects of divine justice is that it does not require your energy. You don't have to seek revenge, carry bitterness, or prove your worth. God takes that burden from you. When you release the situation to Him, you free your spirit. By stepping back, you allow Him to step forward. His justice becomes your protection. His timing becomes your peace. His intervention becomes your vindication. And often, divine justice becomes visible at a moment that feels almost symbolic, the moment you are no longer consumed by the pain, the moment you've healed enough to see clearly, the moment you realize you no longer need an apology to move on. That is when God reveals the fullness of His response. Not when you are broken, but when you are strengthened. Not when you are desperate, but when you are restored. Divine justice arrives when it will empower you, not overwhelm you. This is how God deals with those who hurt you, not immediately, not emotionally, but perfectly, powerfully, and in His time. His justice may be delayed, but it is never denied. In the end, everything you have walked through, every wound you have carried, every moment you questioned, and every tear you shed has not been wasted. The God who sees in secret has been watching over every detail of your life. He has seen the injustice. He has seen the betrayal. He has seen the moments when people spoke against you, underestimated you, or tried to sabotage what He planted within your spirit. And while you may have wondered if their actions went unnoticed, heaven has kept a perfect record. God has not forgotten, and He has not remained silent. Every sign you have witnessed in this journey has been a divine reminder that He is actively dealing with the people who hurt you, not out of cruelty, but out of justice, correction, and divine order. His purpose is not only to protect you from harm, but to ensure that nothing built on lies, manipulation, or ill intentions can stand. This entire message is a testament to the truth that you are not alone. God has been your defender in moments you did not even realize you needed defending. When their comfort was disrupted, God was awakening their conscience. When He removed their influence, He was clearing your atmosphere. When he exposed their true intentions, he was showing you what love could never reveal on its own. When their plans collapsed, it was a reminder that no weapon formed against you will ever prosper, not because you are strong, but because God is faithful. When he turned their attacks into your elevation, it was his way of demonstrating that nothing meant for your harm can ever overpower his plan for your destiny. And when he brought divine justice in his perfect timing, it was to show you that he is a God who makes crooked places straight and restores what was unfairly taken. What you have endured has shaped you, refined you, and prepared you for a future far greater than what you lost. This is not the season to carry bitterness, fear, or resentment. This is the season to rise, to breathe again, to reclaim your peace, and to walk boldly into the life God is unfolding before you. Forgiveness does not excuse what was done, it frees you from what was done. Release them, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to move forward without carrying the weight of their actions. Let this conclusion settle deep in your spirit. God is not just dealing with those who hurt you. He is lifting you, healing you, and preparing you for a chapter where your heart is stronger, your faith is deeper, and your vision is clearer. What tried to break you has become the very thing that built you. What tried to silence you has positioned you to speak with authority. What tried to block you has become the platform for your breakthrough. You are stepping into a season where God's justice, God's protection, and God's restoration will speak louder than the voices that once tried to tear you down. The hurt was real, but so is the healing. The betrayal was painful, but so is the blessing that is on its way. Trust that God has seen it all, judged it all, and handled it all. And now it is your time to rise with peace in your heart, victory in your spirit, and confidence in the God who fights for you in ways you could never fight for yourself.